I wouldn't call the 11th generation Civic the worst kept secret in the automotive industry, because Honda has been dripping out pictures and teasers and prototype sketches and prototype models, etc. over the last few months. But today we finally know exactly what the 11th generation Civic sedan will look like. At some point soon, there's also going to be a Civic hatchback. Honda has all but confirmed that, and we know that the Civic Coupe is well and truly dead, so don't expect a two-door model at any point soon. Now, some folks I've spoken to today feel a little bit disappointed that the Civic sedan isn't more exciting, more bold, and more in your face, but I have to say I like Honda's restrained school of design. This is one of the more elegantly designed vehicles in this segment, and honestly, it could be an Acura if they simply swapped out the logo and maybe the headlights for something that looks a little bit more Acura-like. If you're looking for one of the most grown-up compact mainstream sedans, that's definitely going to be the Honda Civic. First, let's go through the photo album that Honda has sent out, then we'll talk about what's going on under the hood. As you'd expect out of a vehicle with a restrained front-end design, the rear-end design is also relatively restrained. We have LED tail lamps, but if we look closer, it looks like these are combination LED tail lamps. So the turn signal out back looks like it's still going to be an incandescent element, even in the top-end two-ring model that they're showing here. We don't have any visible exhaust tips in this model. They look tucked up under the bumper, but all the lines are very clean and relatively simple. Thankfully, Honda didn't just send out pictures of the top-end model, they also sent along some pictures of the Sport trim, and as you can see, it is hardly distinguishable from the two-ring trim up front, so it looks like most models are going to get the same sort of feel. The wheels change for the Sport trim, and you'll notice the bigger change out back, where we have a single visible exhaust tip on the passenger side. The most dramatic change for the Civic happens inside. The current generation Civic definitely feels a little bit behind the times, but this one feels very, very modern. We have this very distinctive honeycomb strip that runs the entire width of the dashboard. Let me know what you think about that look in the comment section. I'm really going to want to know what this is like to clean, because with so many little holes all the way across, including areas where the air comes out the vent and areas where it does not seem to, I'm wondering how easy this is going to be to clean behind there. This may be sort of an automotive detailing nightmare, but I love the look. I love how clean it looks where you just have the little knobs that control the air vents, and then the actual vent itself just blends into that honeycomb strip across the dashboard. The infotainment system, there are going to be two different ones. The base one is going to be a 7-inch infotainment system. It's going to be basically the same software that we see in the Honda Accord and the Honda Odyssey. Honda has not mentioned any specific tweaks for the software inside the Civic, so it's going to be pretty much what we see in the Accord. Now, if you get the optional 9-inch touchscreen infotainment system, then it does have wireless Apple CarPlay. Honda didn't send out too many detailed photos of the dashboard, but if we continue down the dash, you'll notice the controls for the dual-zone automatic climate control system. It looks like a single hidden USB port behind the shifter. That looks like that's the charge-only port. There's probably going to be another one that interfaces with the system. It doesn't look like we're seeing USB-C here yet. We have a pretty traditional console shifter, so if you don't like the Honda Hunt and Peck shifter that we find in some of their larger vehicles, fear not, we have a traditional one here. Two pretty large cup holders. You should know that this particular picture does not appear to be production accurate for the US model, because according to the spec sheets, the full LCD cluster that you're seeing in this photo is going to be reserved only for the very top-end two-ring model. If you get the other models, then we get an instrument cluster that is very similar to the Honda Accords, where we have a smaller 7-inch LCD and then a physical speedometer next to it. The two-ring model, on the other hand, gets a full LCD instrument cluster that looks somewhat similar to what we see in the Acura MDX. Back on the outside, Honda has tweaked with the proportions of the Civic to try and give it a more elegant and more pronounced hood look. They've made the entire vehicle 1.3 inches longer, the wheelbase 1.4 inches longer, and then they've made the hood several inches longer by pushing the base of the windshield 2 inches further to the rear. The result is a look that honestly reminds me a little bit of the Acura TLX, and I'm really going to be interested to see if the Acura ILX, which has long been Civic-based, retains some of the proportions that we see here, or whether it goes to perhaps an even more extreme long hood profile if the ILX returns. As expected, Honda decided to tweak rather than replace the engine lineup, so the LX trim and the Sport trim get a 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine. It produces 158 horsepower and 138 pound-feet of torque. That engine has made it exclusively to a continuously variable automatic transmission. If you get the Sport trim, then you get paddle shifters on the back of the steering wheel. Then we have the familiar 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It produces a little bit more oomph this year, 180 horsepower and 177 pound-feet. You'll find that in the EX trim and in the two-ring trim. The two-ring trim gets paddle shifters, the EX trim does not. But both trims get a continuously variable automatic transmission as well. Interestingly, the Sport trim and the two-ring trim will get 3 drive modes, Normal, Econ, and Sport, whereas the EX trim and the LX trim don't get any adjustable drive modes. Another interesting synergy between models is that the base LX model and the EX model, which is the base 1.5-liter turbo, Both have 215 width tires, which seems a little bit skinny for the power that we find out of that 1.5-liter turbo. Meanwhile, the Sport trim, which again uses the naturally aspirated engine, and the Touring trim get the wider 235 width tires available on the Civic. For 2022, Honda has also tweaked the safety packages on the Civic. They've made Honda sensing feel a bit more natural as far as the radar adaptive cruise control functionality goes. That's one thing that I've noted about Honda sensing in the past, is that transitions seem to be a little bit abrupt when it's interacting with traffic. They say they've made that smoother. They've also given it low-speed braking control. You'll find that only in the Touring trim, unfortunately, and a traditional blind spot monitoring system rather than simply Honda Lane Watch. You'll find that on the EX trim, and you'll find it on the Touring trim. On the Touring trim, you also get cross-traffic monitoring. 2022 brings some new airbag technology to the Civic as well. The rear passengers get side impact airbags in the thorax region in addition to the side curtain airbags that we've seen for a while. The driver and front passenger get new frontal impact airbags as well. The driver's side airbag is apparently going to be a little bit more donut-shaped than before. Unfortunately, Honda has not provided any photos of this airbag, but it's designed to better capture and better control the motions of the driver's head as you're interacting with the airbag. We get something similar on the passenger side with a different shape, a little bit more like a perhaps catcher's mitt, so that way the head can go into the airbag and then basically be controlled and not move side to side, not have those uncontrolled motions that can cause extra neck injuries. In keeping with the more premium mission of this generation Civic, they're promising not just better handling, but also a more isolated cabin and lower road noise levels. That's something that I have noted in this generation Civic, depending on the trim that you're looking at. Also, this is going to be the first Civic to employ a 12-speaker Bose audio system. So if you're looking for a more premium sound experience, Honda now has a better option for you. You'll find that only in the top-end Touring trim, however. Unfortunately, Honda has not said exactly how much this generation Civic will cost, but based on the extra features, you could logically expect this generation to be a little bit more expensive than the outgoing Civic, and generally speaking, the Civic sells an awful lot closer to MSRP than some of the other options in this segment. So you can logically expect to pay a bit of a premium on this generation Civic versus something like the new Hyundai Elantra. Let me know what you think of the look of the Civic down there in the comment section, especially what you think of the interior design and how easy you think that interior is going to be to keep clean. I know some folks have been disappointed that this interior and the exterior weren't quite adventurous enough for them. They were expecting something different rather than sort of next generation scale version of the Honda Accord, which I think is really a good way to describe this generation of the Civic. Now personally, I don't mind that. I like the clean lines and the clean look that we have in this generation Civic. It's certainly less controversial than some of the newer options in this segment, like the new Elantra. Honda has yet to release details of the upcoming Civic Si. They have all but confirmed it. Not completely official, but we know it's coming. They also have not confirmed a future Type R. That is a little bit more nebulous. We don't know when that will happen. Probably will happen at some point in the future. We just don't know exactly when. We also don't know what the hatchback looks like, and we don't know if there's going to be a hybrid model or not. If you recall, the hybrid Civic currently is called the Honda Insight. Will the Insight get replaced by a Honda Civic Hybrid, or will it continue to be a separate model with Honda's two-motor hybrid system? We just don't know at this point. I wouldn't be too surprised if at some point or another Honda just merged the Insight back into the Civic lineup, because of course Toyota sells a hybrid Corolla and Hyundai sells a hybrid Elantra. They don't split those out into separate models. Although the Insight was designed in theory to compete with things like the Hyundai Ioniq and the Toyota Prius, so it's always possible that Honda might stay in that same direction. As always, hit that subscribe button down at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of the latest news, including more news on the 2022 Civic and, of course, a review just as soon as I can get my hands on it. This will be going on sale this calendar year, so expect a drive review coming up over the next few months.